Thank you very much, Rob, and thank you very much for being here. I'm really, really excited to be here. I've already met tons of people who running amazing companies, and so I'm really excited to be able to share some of our story and hope that we can have some good questions afterwards. So yeah, the title of my talk is Bootstrapping for Badasses, and just to, in case you don't know, or you've never heard of You Can Book Me, we do online scheduling. It's the kind of thing where you make your calendar available for bookable slots, that kind of thing. We've been running since 2000 well, actually, me and Keith have been building products since 2003, so we're one of those sort of veteran kind of companies that have been doing this for a long time, but making a lot of mistakes along the way. But this is the team as we are now. Keith, standing at the top, I think there, is my husband. He's the CTO. He's the one that's been building all these products, causing all the problems. And I came in 2012 to start running the company, to sort of put it all together into something that made sense for us. And I'm sure you're going to recognize some of the stories that I've got to tell in that. You Can Book Me is, we're bootstrapped, and right now we're doing around 900,000 bookings a month. We've got a very steady sort of 100% growth rate annually. And so we've got some very big infrastructure engineering challenges in terms of the turnover of what we're doing for scheduling, but also how we're growing ourselves as a company and what we're learning along the way. And so, and being bootstrapped, like everybody else has said already, it's a way we've run our business, but it's not necessarily, a total ideology. But I sort of wanted to quote Hitan Shah, who spoke at this conference a couple of years ago, and he said that he thought he shouldn't call ourselves bootstrapped, that somehow it was, sounded a bit too amateur, and he was telling us that we should call ourselves revenue funded. So it sounded better, revenue funded. But to me, revenue funded kind of sounds a bit like this. It sounds a bit like sort of privately educated or independently wealthy. There's just something kind of quite privileged to me that sounds for revenue funded. It's just not badass enough. So this is where I felt like I wanted to raise the flag for how to bootstrap. So if you're interested, and I know you guys are all doing it, or partially doing it, or interested in it, or worrying about it, I want to tell you how we bootstrapped what was actually quite a tough proposition. You Can Book Me as a freemium tool, so we have thousands and thousands of people who sign up and use us for free, and all of the things that come with that. And I think that, if you'd asked me 10 years ago, would it be sensible to bootstrap basically a free tool, I'd have said no. I would say no now. We didn't know what we were getting into. So the story really for us was, how do we bootstrap from freemium into profitable, into revenue and cash positive. So in this talk, in thinking about that question, I sort of wanted to break it down into three themes. How do you bootstrap like a badass? What's kind of the broader learning we can get from this story? So I'm going to tell you how to think more like Solon. Solon was a 6th century Athenian political statesman and political philosopher. He was one of the people I studied, and loved some of the stories that came out of his experience of being a scribe in 6th century Athens. I'm going to talk about how to be more like the shoemaker, and the elves and the shoemaker, and what you do with your money. And I'm going to talk about how to be more like the Wizard of Oz. So those are my three sections. So back to Solon. Well, as I said, Solon was this sort of incredibly well-traveled and experienced guy that went around, and everybody wanted to talk to him, including this guy, Croesus, who was the king of Lydia. And because Croesus was, as you probably heard the phrase, rich as Croesus, incredibly wealthy, successful monarch, he said to Solon one day, tell me, who do you think is the happiest, wealthiest, who is the happiest person you know? Fully expecting it to sort of say, oh, it's going to be you, Croesus, obviously. Look at you, you're super rich. Lydia's a great place. But actually, Solon went, well, let me think. Oh, that would probably be Tellus of the Athenian. He was a great guy. He had sons. He had children. He lived a long life. And then at the end of the day, he fought in a battle for his country, and he died. And Croesus was sort of like, okay, so seriously, so who's your second guy? Thinking, well, okay, that guy, fine, must be me, is the second guy. And Solon went, oh, that would be Cleobus and Beta. Yeah, they were brothers. They needed to take their mum to a festival in Athens, 5 miles away, and their ox died, so they dragged their mum on a cart to the festival, and they got so exhausted, they died. And Croesus was just like, what, what's your point? Who are these people? Why are you not talking about me? And Solon was just like, look, you can't judge happiness until you die, until you know what your life is about, until you get through it. Don't call it out halfway through and say, hey, I've made it, because you just don't know what the ending will look like. Now, actually, at the end of Croesus' life, he found himself on top of a funeral pyre, because meanwhile, Cyrus of Persia had basically invaded Lydia and had put Croesus on the fire. So, Croesus suddenly realized what Solon was talking about, which, was was bad for him. And I'll leave you to sort of Google the rest of the story to find out what happens. But the point is, it's always stayed with me, this idea that you've got to think about the big picture, but you've also got to think about the journey. And I think that especially in the kind of culture that we all work and run our companies within, there's a lot of that kind of quick fire, turn around, convert, let's move on, let's sort of hold our breath and hyperventilate for a couple of months and see what we can achieve. And we're not seeing necessarily, the journey and whether we're going to end our days feeling pleased that this is what we did. And I think this is something from a bootstrapping point of view, it forces you to do, and I realize it's actually been a very positive thing for us. And I've kind of found this, other people say this as well, so this is a quote from another sort of famous badass bootstrapper. Lots of entrepreneurs just don't have any patience. They say, I want to have a fancy office, the big crew, and the most comfy chairs right now. This is from David Heinemeier Hansen, if you don't recognize it. Growing things from a seed, being a little bit patient, opens up a whole lot of other doors down the road. So that was sort of the message. That's the message from Solon. So what did we do in practical terms, in terms of running You Can Book Me? Well, the first thing was, as I said, I started running You Can Book Me in 2012, but we've been building products since 2003. And as soon as we realized that the traction and the revenue in You Can Book Me was taking on something that we could afford to run full time, that's what I did. So I had this I had to give up my previous career. I was working in politics for my sins. And when I was leaving my job and somebody said to me, well, actually, what are you going to go and do? This was 5 years ago. And I said, I'm going to go and run a software company. And it sounded to me ridiculous, because actually what I meant was, I'm going to go and sit in a coffee shop with Keith with my laptop, and we're going to, promote You Can Book Me. But in my mind, I had already decided, you've got to call it out, you've got to say what you're going to do, you've got to believe it. You've got to actually put yourself down that journey and say, this is what it's going to be. I'm going to run a software company, because if I don't commit to that idea, it won't happen. It's an obvious thing. We stopped building products. There's a lot of synergy here with a lot of people, because you're going to recognize this. Especially software developers. You guys are so good at just spinning out products. Building features. Let's buy a domain. Let's find a logo. Let's start solving the problem. We can do it. We did that. Keith did that. We had loads. A few of them are still going. But I mean, my God, there was just so many opportunities. Honeymoonify. This was just because friends of ours got married. We're like, yeah, we could do so. You can give people some money for their honeymoon. It'd be great. Look, we could build a product. Look, there's a logo. And it was just insane. And we just couldn't sustain it. And none of these products made any money. So we stopped doing that. And we started building a business, because You Can Book Me was the product that actually made money. We could see where it was going. It had the traction. It ticked all the boxes. So we committed to You Can Book Me. We stopped trying to spread our bets across loads of products. And we said, we are going to make this one work. I mean, it might, in the end of the day, it might not, but we are telling ourselves, this is the product we're going to build. We stopped hiring friends. We started hiring colleagues. And again, another classic thing, and we did this at the very early days when we realized we needed to hire people. We felt insecure about who would possibly want to work for us. We didn't have a proper process. We just hired people that we knew. And some of that's worked out. We have got a great colleague of ours who started off as one of our best friends, but actually that's not the best way to manage your labor force, or because if you hire your friends, what happens if you have to fire them? Nobody wants to fire friends. And that's where you get a real sort of problem. But also I think it's a good indicator that you've professionalized, that you have proper processes. This is Dolly Parton from Straight Talk. Get off the cross, honey, somebody else needs the wood. And this refers to me and Keith as co-founders, that when you're bootstrapping, one of the things that you do, or at least we did, is hold ourselves back in terms of paying ourselves. So we were doing full-time jobs elsewhere and other things, consultancy, all the usual stuff. And then you start to realize, no, you've got to commit to your product. But then you never pay yourself enough, because you're always paying all the other people you're hiring. And then I realized after a while, actually, I started to resent that. This company that we'd spent years building wasn't giving me or Keith any kind of proper financial return. So as soon as we could, the next sort of growth spurt that we went through, where we, got a little bit of ahead in terms of our revenue, we're paying ourselves. And now we're the highest paid people in the company, whereas literally a year ago we were the least paid. And I felt that was building in resentment to us by building the company for all these other people to get mortgages, all these other people, to get financial security and love their jobs. And me and Keith are still slogging away. And I know we own the company, but still, it's made a tremendous difference for us to realize by running this, by thinking about Solon and thinking about the long view, this company has to pay back to us personally as well as everybody else that we're doing it for. And then this is the other thing, which is, again, at the beginning you're building products, you're solving problems, you're playing with new technologies, it's fun, it's exciting. And then it's what Natalie said earlier, that's one thing, but building a business is a totally different thing. And actually, fundamentally, you're talking about money. You've got to make money, you've got to make a profit. And Keith is a technologist. I have a background working in the public sector. Neither of us were geared up to making a profit. You feel like that's what Donald Trump does. There's a sort of a kind of an odd association with making profit and money and being a businessman. But actually, it's completely acceptable. I know that this conference is focused on it, and it's something that we have to be unapologetic about, that our businesses have to succeed, and they have to succeed by an easy measure, which is, are you making money? So Solon, is about saying, you call it at the end of at the end of your life, whatever you're choosing to do, whatever products you're building, whatever work you're doing, it is about the long term and what you can say you've achieved with that. And I think you've got nothing to lose by doing that. I don't think, even if tomorrow you then wanted to sell your company and do something else, you'll have anything to lose by saying, I committed to it today, because any commitment you can give to your company today means you're building a more robust, a more resilient company for whatever you choose to do with it next week. I know that some companies, especially I've talked to some here, who believe that they're going to be running their companies for the rest of their life. That's great. But there's also people who say, well, I want to do this, but I might want to, do something completely different next year, which is also fine. Neither outcome should actually stop you from thinking about building robust, confident systems. So, how to bootstrap like the shoemaker. Now this, I'm sure all of you are going to be experts in. The first thing you have to do when you want to bootstrap is understand the difference between cash and credit, revenue and profit. And it's something that we had to learn when you have very little, the money in your bank feels like you can spend it on anything. But actually, of course, there is a lot more to do with, the money as it flows in than just saying it's, I've got X amount in my bank account. And right at the very, very beginning, when you start off, this is your income. This is what you've got to play with. There's really very little. And of course, these are your costs. So you have this sort of enormous pressure on building a business up to a point where you're no longer trying to live off, 6 Ps. So the first thing that we did as a shoemaker, when I took on running the business, I sort of had to gen up basically on management accounts. So this is one of our office meetings that we have. This is me learning about spreadsheets and P&L and balance sheets and stuff. And we always have our meetings in a line like that. It's just very exciting to be able to explain, tricky numbers to people. But it worked out. I mean, it was a sort of a certain amount of, boring classes and courses that I had to do. But essentially, you've got to understand the difference between revenue and cash, because you can make some monumentally big mistakes if you don't know what you're actually earning as a company. Cash up front, I've actually spoken to a few people who said that they really learned from Jason Cohen's presentation a couple of years ago. When we first launched You Can Book Me, the minimum upgrade you could buy was 6 months. We didn't even do monthly billing for the first 2 years, I think. And although we weren't charging very much, which is a different point. But the point is that we've always given this sort of incentive to people to give us money up front. And it's one of the main reasons how we've managed to finance and bootstrap our company, is because we have been funding it through borrowing from ourselves from the future. So I thought I would share this with you, just so you can give a sort of a sense of how we've done that. So for the last couple of years, we're bringing in 10 to 15, and in February, £25,000 of our income in 1 month is up front. So we have to put that into our management accounts. That all gets journaled out. It's kind of a bit of a faff, but I'm sure you all know how to do it. So you can't live off that in terms of income, but you can spend it. And that's made a massive difference to us. And you can see that it doesn't grow. It can be, we can incentivize it. So in February, we're getting better at incentivizing it. You can do all sorts of things which will suddenly give you 15, 20 grand in a month. But certainly, it's made a big difference. We've also messed around with our pricing, which is obviously critical to try to make money and to understand how you're going to get people to pay you. We had one of those traditional free, premium, professional business style tiers with, all the people, the CRO people who say you put the most expensive plan on the left and what's your proxy and blah, blah, blah. And we did all of that. And we changed it as well. So we did mess about with how many features. We made a big mistake on a free tool, which is that every time we did a new feature, we actually put it into the free tool, which made no sense. So at one point, 18 months ago, we just took them all out of the free tool and put them into the paid tool. And what do you know? Suddenly we made another 10,000 quid in that month. But we also were very unhappy with the pricing as we'd set it up, because we just hadn't really thought it through, and we just did what everybody does, and we realized it didn't work for us. So instead, last year we changed the price just to a simple, unit thing. So 1 person, 1 calendar, $10. 10 people, 10 calendars, $100. Really easy to understand. Everybody gets the features, wrapped in. It's made a massive difference. We've simplified a lot of the way we talk to our customers. We've stopped having to explain complicated features and why this feature is in the premium thing and not in the professional. We ourselves had forgotten why such as redirect to URL was in the professional. What? So that's suddenly like, no. How many calendars are you linking to? Well, that's what you pay. Super easy, but also importantly, that we were managing to capture higher spend companies much more easily. The professionals, we professionals I've hired a couple of super, competent ops people who come and do a lot of stuff, but also all your systems, so you bootstrap, you have to look after your money, you can't afford to basically, just flail about in terms of your systems. So we have incredibly watertight systems because we're a very low-touch self-service app. We handle thousands of transactions a day. So we can't afford to do a lot of bookkeeping, basically. So everything, and we're actually right now, if anybody's interested, we are now implementing Killbill, which is the open source billing and subscription software that's used by Groupon, I think. And so, we're basically looking to how do we scale up our app without scaling up the number of people we have to mess about with bits of paper and invoicing and all the rest. And again, it's been something we did from the very, very beginning, like 2 or 3 years ago. We did a really tight integration between Xero and Stripe, just allowing people to come in, upgrade, renew, do all of the stuff that they want to do without really ever talking to them. Everything gets automatically journaled. We have a very small team, essentially, managing quite a lot of high volume of transactions. Managing expectations, this is one of the things that we've done in terms of our hiring. So again, you'll all recognize this. If you're bootstrapped or if you have no intention of taking on VC, then it's a different conversation to hire people who are usually expecting the share options and the sort of the incentives that they normally get. So I have this sort of theory which is called jam today, that expression, which is, why we have jam yesterday, no jam tomorrow, but never jam today. And I believe, no, let's have jam today, We've got money in the bank and we've earned it and it's good. Let's pay ourselves. Let's pay out, profit share is the kind of thing that's going to come in for us this year. And but we also, people know that we don't have an endless run of cash, that we're not actually trying to grow our company through, sort of expenditure on brand and marketing without, sort of feeling like it's all going to be jam tomorrow, so let's just push out the expenditure today to get the jam tomorrow. We say, no, we've got jam today, and this is how much we have. It's a limited budget. So that our staff, everybody who works for You Can Book Me is signed up to that, and they know what that's about. And they know, and we're very open and transparent inside the company. Everybody knows what we all get paid. Everybody knows what we earn. Everybody knows what we spend our money on. It's our choice. It's our jam. So, I think that's been very healthy for us because it's allowed us to be honest about the way we have built the business. I've said to people in the past, We're not trying to secretly build a profitable company, not tell anybody about it. You know, there's no questions inside the team about how we run things. But we have had to borrow money. It's one of the things that we've done, as well as sort of cash up front and keeping an eye on expenses. We've also borrowed money. So, you know, you'll know it's very tricky with banks, because you go to them and say, can we borrow some money because we haven't got any money? And they go, well, we don't lend to loss-making companies. If you haven't got any money, it's not our problem. And you go, oh, okay. And then they go, you know, you say, well, you know, we're going to do something about that. So look at our plan. And they go, well, we don't fund what looks like a risky business speculation. And you go, okay. So then you sort of reshuffle and you tell them sort of what your costs are. And then they go, well, we don't fund director salaries. So you're, okay, fine. So you come back to them with a sort of a presentation which is minimizing how much you're paying yourself, minimizing what it looks like you're going to lose, but giving you the sort of a reasonable amount of what you're going to earn. And then they go, well, if you're going to make a profit, well, how will we know you're going to use our facility, our overdraft or whatever? So, you know, what's in it for us? We're not going to sort of put that liability on us and then you not actually use it. So it's incredibly tricky. And then they finally say, your business model is very unusual. Have you not considered venture capital? So I sort of found myself realizing I have to stop talking to the banks. There's no point, because they don't seem to understand what we're doing, which is a great shame, because I think that actually banks should be there to help companies like ours that do need a bit of upfront cash support, because we can demonstrate that we can grow and we can build on that revenue, but you need something to get going. And that was our revenue. I mean, that's what I was showing the bank. I was saying, look, you know, this was a couple of years ago. We were at $250,000 ARR, and then just sort of a couple of months ago, we hit the 1.5 million ARR mark. You know, we're going to carry on growing to about 2 million annual recurring revenue sort of later on this year. So the bank just didn't believe it. Okay, fine. But I mean, you know, this is one story about how much, you know, we've grown in terms of our revenue, but a much more interesting story from my perspective of what I've been doing with You Can Book Me is this, which is our P&L. And that shows you something which is trickier to pull off, basically. So here, I could use this pointer, but you can see on the left there, April 15th, so 2 years ago, we were sort of bumping along. Sometimes some months we were making a profit, other times we were making a loss, and so it is at this point that, you know, started to hire people and basically increase our workflow and get some people in. And you know, you hire all those people and then you end up sort of £30,000 in the red, and so nobody wants to be there, and you start to panic a little bit more, but actually you're still, you know, carry on hiring people, and that's what we did, knowing that our revenue was going up. And it was a bit of a bet, but at the same time, it's also something where, as I was saying before, if you're all in, if you've committed, if you're going to take the bait, you're going to do it, you're going to run the company, this is what you need to do, essentially. And then at some point, you know, it works out, and you get to a point where your profit margins, and you can see profit coming in, and then you can see, actually, we've done that, and there's nothing really now to stop us from carrying on doing that. You know, that's something which I hear from companies all the time coming to these conferences, as they talk about their profits and their margins. It sounds absolutely brilliant, because coming from our point of view, where it took a long time for us to make profits, it doesn't mean to say that we didn't have cash in the bank, but we weren't making profits. Now that we realize this year is going to be profitable, it feels great. You know, I think that there's a lot to be said. So in terms of the shoemaker and how to be more like the shoemaker, I would say it's very simple. Spend less, make more money. You know, don't hire people. Don't spend money on stuff that everybody tells you, you know, you think you ought to be spending money on, and I'll tell a little bit about that in my next section. And, you know, keep an eye on your costs, and as a result of that, grow more slowly, but then grow more profitably and grow more sustainably. The only thing I would say about VC investment type stuff is that is not income, that's not revenue, that's just more debt. You just take on more debt. And I think it's ironic that we're here in Las Vegas, you know, in the sort of capital of gambling, that I bet nobody in this room really likes gambling. You know, nobody wants to really actually say, let's take on £1 million, £2 million, and see if we can gamble it away on an idea. Like, me and Keith didn't want to do that. We had all those products, and most of them failed. So this one didn't, and this is the one that we've invested in. But it wasn't exactly a gamble, because we measured it, you know, pair of shoes by pair of shoes. I should say I didn't explain the elves and the shoemaker. Does everybody know about the elves and the shoemaker? Is it just my childhood favorite story? Does everybody know that? Oh, well, you have to Google it. If you have no idea what I'm talking about, then Google it. It's a great story. finally, my last section, how to be more like the Wizard of Oz. So this is the Emerald City. This is a sort of a analogy for what we're doing. This is your startup, the promised land. This is what you're trying to achieve, and these are your users. And everything can be kind of set in that context of you're just trying to get a whole bunch of people over here to start using your product and feel happy and fulfilled over here, and all their questions are answered. And it's the kind of thing that we're fervently talking about. How do we get our users to our startup so that we can solve their problems? But more often than not, when you start up, when you have that first idea and you've got the domain and you've got the website, this is actually how you feel. People are turning up at your door and you're like, no, I'm not ready for you right now. I'm a bit of a fraud. Here I am. There's just one of us. It's not actually what you were expecting, or they are or you think that their expectations of you are going to be something more than that. So I'll just give you a chance to read these as I let me know if anybody recognizes these quotes. I've substituted product. You getting it? Natalie's getting it. So anyway, this is essentially what we feel like we should do. This is the traditional sales model. You just basically brag and brag and brag about who you are. You make yourself look bigger than you are. You tell everybody you're gonna solve all their problems, and then hope that they don't find out that you're not going to be able to do that. And I think that one of the lessons I've learned is that bragging isn't selling. In the end of the day, it's stressful because you're kind of pretending to be somebody you're not. So at the very beginning, I felt that we ought to kind of give the impression that we were this sort of big company and we were going to corporately solve everybody's problems. And instead now, I'll tell you what we did instead, or the mistakes that we've made, which I now feel much better about as a company that we don't do any longer. So this is from our front page, our team page, and I say very, very simply, we even though the product has grown over the years, we're still a small and dedicated team who love solving scheduling problems all over the world. We're proud to remain a privately owned company, solvent, stable, and a safe pair of hands. And the thing about that is that we're not trying to brag. We're not trying to say we're the best. We're not trying to say, all your questions will be answered here. But it means that if anybody meets me in the street and they use You Can Book Me, I am who I say I am. We are who we say we are. We're not trying to be anything other than what we're trying to do. And it makes it, in terms of the stress, it makes it so much easier when you know you're being truthful and authentic about your product. So even though there's only 10 of us, we actually do work with some of the biggest companies in the world. Some huge tech companies use You Can Book Me. We interact with people who are running much bigger companies than us. And sometimes we have to say, look, we're just a small team, or this is how we manage things, or this is the process, or we haven't done this before, or we're working hard at this. And what we are hoping and relying on is that our reputation for reliability and for credibility and authenticity is what's taking us through, because we have a lot of customer referrals and people who've used us who are basically vouching for us. So we don't have to say something that we're not. But I think at the very beginning, when I first took on the role, I felt like I needed to be more, I needed to look and invest into solutions which really somebody should have told me at the time, look, you're not ready for that yet. That's 5 years down the line. So, here I am on the left-hand side, sort of feeling very kind of, I have a confession. Sometimes I avoid learning new things because I'm so afraid of acknowledging how little I really know. So this sort of feeling of like, oh God, I've got to sort of reach out and find other people to solve my problems. And over here, I also have a confession. I'm super awesome, and I couldn't be less awesome if I tried. And those tend to be consultants. And so I think that my early experience of when we did have some cash in the bank was spend money on consultants because they're going to come in, they've promised me loads of stuff. I feel insecure that we don't have all of these things in-house. We're going to buy, all this experience. And at the end of the day, to the best of their abilities, we wasted a lot of money. We didn't make any money. And actually, again, in terms of the shoemaker philosophy, we started to make a profit when we stopped spending money on stuff that we just couldn't see was giving us any ROI at all, and we were only doing it for our own kind of cosmetic satisfaction. So these are two examples. So I was really pleased to hear Russ's thing on content marketing. It was absolutely brilliant because we were like, we are exactly the kind of person he was saying, people who do this, it's wrong. It's like, oh God, we did that. People did this. So here's an example. We had a blog because we thought, we've got to have a blog. We had this blog, 6 smart ways. It was this blog that made me think, oh, what are we doing? 6 smart ways to make social media marketing work for your small business. I had somebody write this. It wasn't my idea to write the post. She decided to write it and she put it up there. And I said, what is that? I said, we are a small business. We don't know how to use social media. We've got no idea what we're doing. Why are we blogging about it and pretending to these other people that, it's just like, this is bullshit. I don't recognize this, and I don't want to do it anymore. So we had somebody else, actually, she was a consultant, but she was very good. Two summers ago, she just said, why don't we just close the blog down? And me and Keith were like, really? We can do that? We don't have to have a blog? Because we hadn't thought very, analytically about the intent and the levels, that we were just randomly writing shit on the internet. It's just, wasn't doing anything. So actually, it was just like, yeah, let's just cancel the blog. That's brilliant. The other one was Facebook, and again, we did have a Facebook page. We thought everybody has to have a Facebook page. And actually, it's small businesses who tend to use Facebook, really actively, who find us on Facebook. And again, it's just like, well, we don't really have very much for you. Our content is shit. We haven't got, what are we posting for you? All it is people who kind of give us shitty reviews because they can't find us somewhere else or whatever else. And I just thought, do you know what? I'm just going to simply delete the Facebook group page thing. I'm just not going to do it. I mean, I might do it when we become like 150 strong and we can have a whole social media team who can do it. But I don't want to do Facebook every day. I mean, God bless them. I just don't want to do it. So I just thought, right, that's all gone. That made me feel so much better. So back to the kind of the journey. So what I decided, what we do, what I have been doing, what I have been learning from and getting confidence about the way we run the company is the community. And these are obviously three big ones. But it's reading, it's talking to you guys. It's reading about what these people are doing and saying, right, yeah, look, they said exactly the same thing. That's the way I feel. That's good. I can't be really wrong here if my community is saying the same thing as how I feel. So being like the wizard means, you obviously can be as big as you want to be. You can be MailChimp. You can be $1 billion company, but you can still be true. You can still be authentic. You have to be yourself, because otherwise, who are you if you're just trying to pretend to be, something that you think everybody else wants when it's not really you? So my last words, it's just really a repetition. To bootstrap like a badass, be like Solon, think about the long term, commit to the long term. You've got to be in it to win it, as they say. Be like the shoemaker, be patient with what you can make on a day-by-day basis, and profit will come. And be like the wizard, start feeling authentic and enjoying yourself. And see you with this last one. Thank you.
Thanks. You briefly mentioned profit sharing as an alternative to stock options and incentivizing employees. Could you talk to us a little bit about how that's set up?
Well, we haven't, because we've only just started to make a profit. So what we did was last year, just before Christmas, is kind of as a gesture of goodwill, we gave everybody like a cash bonus to say, look, money's in the bank, we're going to start paying it. But people like Natalie have been talking about profit share and what she does, Balsamic do it. There's a sort of well-established models of taking a percentage of your profit and then, on some form of formula, everybody gets it. And I think we're going to, it hasn't been formulated, but it'll be something along the Balsamic kind of lines. And it is important because I know that, we're a remote team as well, so I think one of the things I haven't totally figured out in our processes is that kind of asymmetry in terms of cost of living and what we should be paying out and longevity. But I think it goes back to the kind of thinking about long term. It could be, that we have You Can Book Me for the rest of our lives. And if that's the case and we create quite a lot of wealth in that company, then I do want people who feel like they've invested. And we have some people who've worked for us for, sort of 5 years now, they invested in us, and I think it is only right that they also feel the benefits of creating a profitable company alongside me and Keith, because of course we couldn't do it without them. And I want them to feel that, you know, they see what that is, and also as an incentive for people to join us when we're hiring. So I haven't got the figures to hand, but it'll be something that'll make everybody happy.
I think Peldy has written that up.
He has,
Google
yeah.
Peldy balsamic profit sharing. He's gone into pretty much detail about it. And if he hasn't, you should email him and ask him to write it up, because he's pretty good at that stuff.
Mm.
Hi there. You mentioned killing the blog and the Facebook page.
Yeah.
What are you doing for marketing in the social
Nothing.
space? Nothing?
Nothing.
That's
But
what I'm doing now, and it's yeah. It has worked somewhat.
I should explain. I mean, you know, so I was dissing our free tool before, but actually that is our one referral channel. So we have on the free version of You Can Book Me, you've got a Powered for Free button. So half of our, or actually more than that, of our new account creations are coming from people who are basically being driven to the page from our Powered For button. But also, we've been around for such a long time now. We are coming up much more naturally in terms of the search returns and reviews and all of that kind of thing. And actually, there's been a sort of what happens with You Can Book Me is that one person will start using it in a particular sector, and then it will snowball, and other people will see that that's the tool for them to use. So we've been very, very lucky, and I'm not being complacent about it at all. And actually, it's something which, as we've moved, what we've been focusing on in the last couple of years has been the infrastructure challenges of growing so quickly in terms of the actual use of the tool, our stack. Our product, which is quite old, so we've been re-engineering our product. And then growing and identifying what kind of company culture and team we have, and then getting that to a sustainable business. So we're now in the point where we're like, okay, right, how are we going to push this forward? Which I believe that next year will be, I'll come back in a couple of years' time and I'll tell you the story of how we've managed to do some marketing.
Thanks again, Bridget.
Thank you very much, everybody.